high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Welcome to another episode of Talking Catholic. This is Katie Hagan, and I'm with Mike Walsh.
We get criticized all the time for making it sound like we're like starting an NPR broadcast. And I appreciate the fact that you're bringing the NPR energy, Katie, so thank you for that.
I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say to that.
You know what you need, what I need to tell you is, and you might as well do this on the recording as anything else, is the last episode was your first official full podcast, and I've gotten a great deal of response on that. You really did a great job last week, so thank you for that. Genuinely, it was really good. A lot of people loved that episode.
Wow, thank you.
And so don't worry about it. You're definitely bringing it.
I wish you told me that before we started recording. I would have came in here.
Wouldn't you like
more,
no, I mean,
mellow,
for future raises, don't you want to have that in your back pocket?
Yeah, but before we start recording.
No. Before we start recording is when I shiv everybody, but on the air is when I tell them all the good stuff that I like about them.
That's incredible. Oh,
so,
thanks,
you really
everyone.
did. No,
shout out to everyone.
That was a great episode. We talked about one of my favorite topics, which is social workers, and the 3 social workers we had were outstanding. But you did a really good job, so I was happy to be able to bring you back on a second week and give you another shot at practice for podcasting. So good job there. Did you now you and I have to actually give you another compliment. You 24 hours ago, you didn't know you were going to be here.
No.
We had our meeting on Monday with the whole staff, and you went through the litany of stuff you had to work on, and you have a ton of stuff to knock out. And
just this week,
you have a ton of stuff to knock out. And then I came up with this dumb idea of this particular subject matter to have the podcast about, and thought you would be the perfect co-host for it, since it's sort of half in your area. And you, being the good egg you are, Kate stepped right up and said, "I don't have the time, but sure." So thank you for spending an hour of your time here. I really appreciate it.
No problem. No problem at all.
You have a hard time with compliments, don't you?
I do. And it's also, I've had back-to-back meetings today, so I think I'm just like slow
Frazzled.
to respond in general since 9 o'clock this morning.
And you had a very emotional call earlier today you were telling me about.
Yeah.
You were doing a pre-interview for a story you're going to do. And one of these classic Catholic charity moments where you hear like one of these heart-tugging stories and it actually affects a person.
Yep.
You were affected, weren't you?
I'm easily affected, so I cry at Hallmark movies, so I'm a crier. And it was actually my first call I had with a client. So I've done a lot of writing and stories since I've been here, but I haven't had a chance to sit down with a client. All my stories have been through the people I work with. So this was my first time to have a call with someone we're currently serving, and their story was so incredible. It's a family of 5 that we're getting them a house in Atlantic City. They've been homeless for close to 2 years, and they prayed every night, and they have 3 kids, and their kids, all they've wanted for Christmas, for everything, instead of like kids asking to go to Disney, they're like, we just want a house. Yeah. And I had tears in my eyes. They're a young couple. The husband, who is the primary care provider, got sick. He had gotten double pneumonia in his lungs, and he's on oxygen. He was in a coma 3 times, and the wife had to take care of him, so she couldn't start working. She only has a part-time job, and so they've been living out of their car, living out of hotels, and living with family for 2 years. And the one thing they said that I've noticed with a lot of our clients at Catholic Charities is they were like, we have called everywhere for 2 years, and you are the only ones that called me back. Yeah. And this is the first time I've heard that from people I work with, that we were the first people to call them back and help them. So on the first call, we had a program immediately ready for them to get into a house. So they were doing their intake today. The landlord they're working with is painting the kids' bedrooms, putting in new carpet for them. So it was just an incredible story. I couldn't believe it. And they were like, we're so happy we were able to hold on to hope for 2 years. And my kids, every day when they wake up now, they're like, when do we get to move into our new home? And the tears were flowing. I was just like, I wish it was through Zoom. And I was like, I wish I could come through the screen and like hug you. So we had Amy, who is working with them there, and she's like holding them as they're crying, telling me this story. And I was just, tears were, and then I had to go to my next meeting and act like nothing happened.
I was in that meeting, and you refused to interact with anybody because you were what? You said you were just soaking it in?
Yeah, soaking it in.
That's right.
Understanding all the personalities was my first committee meeting. So
well, yeah, well, we can talk about it. It was for the annual Catholic Charities, or the Catholic Charities annual dinner, which this year is, I think, slated to be around mid-October, and it's a great event that we do every year, but it takes a year of planning to put it together. And we were sitting with the steering committee and actually had a great conversation about the possibility of who the honorees are going to be at this one. So look for that in the future, folks, because the Catholic Charities annual dinner is always a great event. It'll be Katie's first event this year. As a matter of fact, we were interviewing you during the process of last year's, and there was a moment when I thought we were going to be able to hire you before the event and throw you right into it, but you got lucky on the timing, and you didn't start till the end of December.
Yep.
But that was boy, did we need you last year. We were short staffed. I could have used you.
Yeah, you were like, how early can you start? I was like, when do you need me back?
Don't worry, you're gonna get plenty of Catholic Charities annual dinner work coming out. You already saw today's meeting. It's a whole lot of Katie work.
Yeah.
But no, it's I mentioned it on last week's podcast, but you've been a great addition to Catholic Charities, and I know the folks over there have really taken to you. So as someone who's a supervisor, that's what I like to hear, is that my people are really well appreciated. So thank you for giving the Catholic Charity, or for the communications department of the Diocese of Camden, a good reputation with the Catholic Charities folks. So thank you for that.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity. So
no, man, thanks for responding to the job ad.
Do we keep saying thank you to each other?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, listen, what did I tell you when you first started? I said I will not yell at you for the first year because you're still learning everything. So I'm still complimentary in the first year. Wait till you hear the year two.
I'm not looking forward to it, honestly. It's
like Festivus. It's the airing of grievances. I just hold it together for a year.
We'll see if I make it that far.
Fingers crossed. You're well liked enough. I think it's going to happen. Well, that's enough self-love for the start of this podcast. We actually are going to interview another new addition to the team, hired not that long after you, as a matter of fact, but another one where we waited for a long time to fill this position, because quite honestly, we had a real difficulty. I was part of the hiring team eventually, and we had a real hard time finding someone who could really capture a department that oversees a very unique audience within the Catholic Church, and that's the Life and Justice Department. And the person we hired is Dr. Mike Sims. How you doing, Sims?
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. And before Katie's story, I thought this was going to be another episode of Smartless with Will Arnett and company. I didn't know where we were going with that. I mean, holding back some of the laughs and tears, too. I think we just had this episode about Katie's experience. And you can talk a little bit about me.
Oh, don't worry. Katie's going to be on a lot. No, you needn't worry about that. We're going to get a lot of Katie perspective in the future. We've done, let's see, this is our 330, this might be our 333rd episode, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
So we've done a lot of stuff, yeah.
It's a good angel number.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Very nice. Angel number, I forgot about that.
Thanks for having me.
No. It's our pleasure. Thanks for joining the diocese. You started when?
4 weeks ago.
4 weeks ago. So you're
about that, right as the Eucharistic revival was ramping up for Father Hyde and company, and so Donna Octaviano Britt.
Nobody pronounces it correctly. Don't worry about
now
it.
Is that right?
Hey, you know what? Can I tell you a background on that?
It's important for me.
Well, it might be, but here's the thing. The funny thing is, you can blame our IT department for that.
Why?
When Donna was hired, she was Donna Britt, and I was very excited about the idea of being able to just call her, because I call her by their last name, so I was looking forward to just calling her Britt. And she was like the first week, she's already in my account as Britt in my contacts page. And just fast and simple, right? The IT department somehow was given her background or information. And I forget if in the real world or before she got here, she was hyphenated or not. So her original last name is Ottaviano. But she had been known as Britt for years. But because the IT department stuck her into the system as Ottaviano, she's been Donna Ottaviano ever since. And it has basically ruined my life for the last 4 years because it just added so many syllables to my life. So don't worry.
Yeah, that's quite all right.
And everybody knows who Donna is, so you can just go with Donna.
Very good. That's good.
But yes, yeah.
So I came on board when everything was happening in the office to prepare for the Eucharistic revival. And I guess the funny one-liner about that. What I was saying is good to come on board when you see people at their worst, when they're preparing for something. I learned a lot. There are so many great people doing a lot of things. Harvest is plenty and laborers are few, but those who are few are really kicking it out. So I was happy to be a part of that in the beginning here.
You've been speaking for all of 2 minutes, and you've already thrown spiritual references into your conversation, which, as you know, in the preceding 10 minutes hadn't occurred. So thank you for that, because that's once again another bonus. You're
I
a
love
member.
it.
Isn't that nice? I know, he's so sweet. It's irritating.
Yeah.
Irritating.
It's irritating. The pastoral department. You're a member of the pastoral department, essentially.
Correct.
Yeah. So, or the secretariat for pastoral work, which basically encompasses youth and young adult ministry, family ministry,
office is right across from mine.
Hispanic ministry, Donna's leadership and discipleship ministries.
Right.
So it's all. So basically, your group. As a whole, it works with the parishes quite a bit, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
And you were specific to life and justice, which, for Katie's purpose, what's life and justice?
Well, I'd like to put it, kind of encapsulated, that life is sacred from womb to tomb. So that was Cardinal Bernardin's kind of consistent ethic of life. And although that he's not necessarily the originator of that term, it really speaks to what the office of Life and Justice Ministries is about, and looking at life issues from the womb. So many of the pro-life, we want to use that term as defined groups like United for Life, who I'm going to kind of meet next week, to some of our, what we might be the boots on the ground social justice. For instance, I'm meeting with Pat Slater, Christ Our Light, tomorrow, and to speak about ways in coordinating those needs, see the need, meet the need that Christ Our Light has done, and meeting people at, for instance, Maximilian Kolbe, who are working on accompaniment with immigrants. So this is the span of all that. That involves social outreaches, groups like Sister Helen Cole and Guadalupe Ministries, which I hope to kind of meet with her. We've worked, my wife and I have supported them in the past. And so I look forward to meeting her personally, have a fondness for the Sisters of St. Joseph. So it's kind of meeting those organizations as well as the parishes and the people that are doing that. Now, for 2 years, to speak quite frankly, the position of Director of Life and Justice has been fallow, to use the term Father Hughes has used. And so it's kind of reconnecting the connections. So in part, that's what I see my job as doing. Now, that means from organizational level, like connecting with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, their outreach on pro-life ministries, to all the different life and justice ministries that might be within parishes. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a daunting task, but I'm not looking at the big picture yet. I'm looking at the people that are on the front lines who are doing that work, and that's where it has to start. People before programs, as I'd like to say.
I read your 90-day plan for action.
Did.
I was the HR department gave it to me, and I was very confident.
So that was a quick turnover.
You had it nicely done. You broke it down into the first month, which was basically meet everybody, and then months 2 or 3, don't do anything that's going to screw anything up. I'm like, all right, that's good. That's nice.
Don't remember that part. Okay,
I might be paraphrasing. Now, Katie, because it was funny because we were talking about this before the podcast. We were saying, you had asked around, like, what is the Life and Justice? What do they do? And nobody could accurately describe it to you.
Not even you.
I did describe it to you. I gave you the best. I can't say it on air, but it was the best description of it. But do you have a better feel for it now that Mike has explained it?
I do. I don't think I was aware of the parish work. So I've been told that there's a lot of overlap with Catholic Charities, but I haven't really understood where that is. But how you'll be working with the parishes, that makes a lot of sense. So it's clear. It's still a foggy window, but it's clear. It's like defrosting.
It's defrosting. That's actually good.
Mike has defrosted the window. I like that. That's nice for you.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is there's all sorts of overlap. I don't know if you use the word overlap. I say connections. There's that scene in Ghostbusters where you don't cross the streams. Well, the idea is to cross the streams with the work at hand. So to work with like Jose and young adult ministry within parishes is going to be important. To work with Catholic Charities, is going to be important. Work with families. Families is at the center of life and justice. That's where it begins in many ways. And I kind of see that role. Just for instance, today I was in communication with Nancy McNamara. She's been appointed the head person for Catholic Relief Services, so to eventually become the director of Catholic Relief Services within the diocese. I'm excited about, and because there's that international part of that yet that connects to the domestic church that we live in. So there's a broader spectrum to it, and to the life and justice, which basically is everything. So to use Donna's term, and I hope she don't get flack for this, it's a bit like sculpting fog.
That's not a bad way of describing it.
Yeah.
The
people aren't the fog. It's just the reality of how do you bring everyone together.
It's, life and justice, selfishly, it was very irritating to have the position vacant for 2 years, because a lot of our content for the Catholic Star Herald, along with a lot of our digital content, emanated from the great work that's being done in the life and justice field in the parishes, and certainly at the diocesan level as well. But without essentially a coordinator there letting us know, it was a lot more difficult for us to because we didn't have the connections. We have certain connections, but we didn't have all the connections. So we were doing a lot. During those 2 years, my social media coordinator, Maria D'Antonio, and myself were basically running the social media arm of the department. And we honestly could only do so much because, we are communicators, which is to say we're essentially dead, not Maria, but we're essentially dead inside. So it's hard for us to care for people. Whereas the two of you, do such great work with communities, which is why we need you so badly. Amen. Communicators need people like you. Like that story that Katie was telling earlier about being on a phone call with people who have been touched and clients.
Absolutely.
I've been doing those for 20 years. There's nothing left.
Oh my gosh.
I don't get touched by them anymore. But they are incredibly important, and the people who care about them, number one, need to offer assistance, and people like us need to be able to communicate them to tell the wider audience. So it's okay that I am dead inside, but it's great that you guys aren't. You will be eventually, Katie. Don't worry about it. But Mike isn't, and that's very important. So thank you for taking on this extremely important role.
Thank you for seeing me as a living, breathing human being. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Fully.
That's fine. So I'm a bit of an old hat in terms of age, and one might argue that, but
listen, you're 5 years older than me, so let's not throw around that old too much yet.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. 5 years older. Well, you will be 5 years older.
I think God calls the people that often, and this is reflective in Scripture, who would seemingly not fit the description, but yet I think, given the experience that I've had in education and ministry, that might this be an opportunity to broaden those connections and bring them deep. And I look forward to your speaking of the issue of the breadth and scope of connections, but working with Jen Morrow and Star Herald. And, I can't speak now to an idea that she and I were speaking on, but I'm looking forward to pursuing that, something with an issue and Star Herald and publications. And stuff.
We've actually taken it easy on you for the last month. To tell you the truth, we usually get our mitts into someone and start making them do work.
Good.
A lot of hard work. Katie knows.
Katie's shaking her head. Yes, is that for true?
Yeah. How many articles I put out in my first 4 weeks? I'm looking at you. I'm like, I'm kidding.
Yeah, we cut your break, but we only cut your break because we were doing the Eucharistic Congress, and we were just too busy to focus on anything else.
That's why I came on board, so I could slip in there without people noticing.
Smart.
But let's talk about your background a little bit, because you are in some ways emblematic of the prior directors in this department, which is, I think, a good thing.
That's a compliment. Yeah,
it is, because I will say that when I first came on board as a smug public relations person, I kind of looked down on everybody. And the folks at the Life and Justice Department, I just have a hard time. I had difficulties, right? Personally,
because they're Jesus freaks, or
sure, let's call them that. I don't know. I couldn't really pinpoint for it, but occasionally they would push my buttons. Not intentionally, just it was a me problem. It wasn't a them problem. It was a me problem. But with them being gone, both Michael Jordan Lasky and then his successor, Matt Davis, I suddenly realized number one, how useful those guys were, and number two, how much I needed them in my job. So I was one of the people that kept encouraging us to fill this position, but it just took us so long because a person that can fill that position needs a certain level of background, which God bless you have.
Thank you.
Let's talk about your background a little bit.
Great.
What brought you into this insanity?
Well, it's not so much a what, but a who. There is a Hugh, like Father Robert Hughes, who kind of tapped me in about that experience, knowing my experience in education and ministry. But I think that's particularly, it's a short answer, but the what has always been, over the years, kind of seeing that there really isn't a disconnect when you work in Catholic education between what you teach and what you live. I mean, that is, in fact, for instance, the U.S. bishops on to teach as Jesus did. I think it's part of that has always been stirring within me. And a few years ago, and before this position kind of went silent for whatever the time and reasons, I saw it posted literally, and I thought this would be a neat kind of venture to do something exciting. I'm not one, nor have I ever been to kind of shy away from a challenge. And I thought, wow, this is thinking about maybe making a different move outside of education. How might I bring all those experiences into working and living the faith? And so that's the short of it all. I mean, there's been people along the way saying, do you ever think about this? As a matter of fact, my colleague and good friend at Mary Mercy Academy, name dropping as part of kind of what I do, but Jeff Mayer, we had talked about years ago working with Catholic charities, like actually taking a jobs up. And one of the criteria was you had to be bilingual, and I'm not all that good at it. And so, or even work with CRS, because Mary Mercy Academy, and still is, I think, is a platinum member of that. That is one of the places I taught at, Mary Mercy Academy in PA, Sisters of Mercy Institution. And so there'd always been an inkling to kind of do that kind of work in terms of mission. And my parish experiences, whether it be a Church of Holy Family or prior ones when my wife and I were active parishioners of St. Vincent de Paul in the Germantown section of Philadelphia, just working with the people, working in all sorts of different groups, there's always been that stirring, how to connect both of them. So there's always a teaching part of it. So when this position came up, I thought, this looks exciting. I'm not the one to rest on my laurels. So
Well,
I
that's
think I
good to
drive
hear.
my wife crazy about that, but
No,
she'll be listening to this and saying, yeah, that's true.
What's your wife's name?
Mary Kay, Dr. Mary Kay Staley Sims, hyphenated, by the way,
of course.
which in 92 was... And
quite progressive.
Right. Well, everyone was starting to do that, and I was okay with her just doing Staley or Sims, but she wanted Staley Sims, so it works well for her.
Power couple, both doctors. Come on.
I like that. So let's go back a little further. So I read a very early bio, which I don't know if Katie had an opportunity to read yet, but it's hysterical, and you really should. You did, well, because so we do hey, listen, we vet everybody, right? And I look for stuff, everybody's backgrounds, like see who's crazy. Katie's very smart. She turned off all of the public notices on her social media account, so she's very hard to find. Yeah, but you didn't. So anyway, we went into yours, and I was like, well, let's see if he's done any interviews, and he certainly has. He'd done one when he joined Manor Academy, right?
Manor College.
Yeah,
right.
Manor College.
In Jenkintown.
And it was this great thing, and it basically explained how he sort of got started on the path to where he is now as an academic and someone who's worked in religious institutions for forever. And it had to do with screwing up his knee in hockey.
Oh, I read that.
Yeah. You did. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's kind of what...
You want me to start there? I don't know.
I'm curious, like, what pivot... Because it's not typical, even back then, that necessarily you'd see a lot of guys going in down the spiritual route unless they were planning on becoming a priest or something like that. Right. And just sort of looking at that interview, I was like, man, I'd like to know how he went from being someone who was looking at a hockey future in his life to someone who was looking in the spiritual future.
Yeah, that was a... Well,
also, by the way, I screwed up my knee in football, so it's sort of...
Oh, you did unhappy triad, snap, crackle, pop.
That's exactly right.
Well, it actually began in hockey, but it made its fruition at Camelback, where I really did it all, and I was playing Division 2A, but I don't think it's 2A at LaSalle University as a goaltender. And I wanted to try out for the Flyers practice squad that year, but This is before I met my wife, Mary Kay, who attended Chestnut Hill College. But the remarkable thing about all that was I took that rest of that semester and that summer off, came back and finished the rest of I would have graduated at LaSalle University in 89. And here's two remarkable things that came out of it. Maybe it's more than two, but one was I eventually met Mary Kay. In this,
It's amazing how important wives are in your
absolutely.
In your life, in men's lives.
Well, here's the thing, and Katie should know this: women always point the way, and men follow throughout history.
That is
if you
right.
think about it,
Yeah.
even back to Mary, mother of Jesus.
Katie's already been telling me stories about her husband. I understand.
So,
Brett, listen to Katie. She's right.
Brett.
He does. He does. We love Brad.
So I had entertained religious life with the Marianist Society of Mary, but that was because the Marianists who have Dayton University taught at St. James, which is now closed in Chester, and I had an inkling, but I kind of somehow I was moving beyond that, and then I was thinking, all right, so where am I going with all this? And that event really kind of was sometimes you have to be kicked in the butt, so to speak, kind of prioritize my life in such a way where I got more active with, I was in fraternity at school, and that was kind of getting a little bit crazy. But I turned my attention to beautiful people at LaSalle's campus ministry, two of which are passed away, Brother Charles Eckelmeyer and Oblate St. Francis de Sales, who is a confrere of Michael McGrath, Rick Wojnicki, two great men who made a profound influence on my life. And I started thinking in terms of the bigger picture where I would be, and I was thinking religious education. But at the time, I met Mary Kay because I was obviously attending when I would have graduated, right? And she was a graduating class in 1990, so to kind of speed this up, got involved with the Sanctuary movement, which in Philadelphia were groups of churches to get political prisoners, and one was two women out of El Salvador at the time when the troubles down there before the Jesuits were killed. And here we are in a round table when I was living, believe it or not, it wasn't entertaining the Oblate St. Francis de Sales, but I was living at Holy Child Parish in Our Lady of Hope on Broad and Duncannon with Rick Wojnicki. And we had some meetings, and there I see my wife across the table, or I wasn't entertaining at that time, but and those relationships start to bub because now you feel you have these core values and you're kind of moving in that direction. So much so that we both joined the Vincentian Service Corps after school. So it went from Oblates to Vincentians to Christian Brothers and all good mixed in between. But that's where this trajectory started to kind of see when you're meeting all these people, and they're doing service to the hard-pressed members of society, but there's joy in what they're doing. And that's really attractive, because if we're not doing anything within our ministry without the joy, we're not really what are we doing? We're meeting a need, right? But there's that love. And there's my favorite, so I'm taking this plug, and thank you, Mike, for doing this. One of my favorite quotes from St. Vincent de Paul is, it's not enough to give soup and bread. This the rich can do. It's only for your love alone that the poor will forgive you the bread that you give them. And that has been my mantra to kind of lead in ways that, now it's a part of a larger quote, St. Vincent de Paul, but I was very much inspired by that through my life. So I continued that in my educational journey as a teacher, secondary ed. So that's inspired me in ways that have become so quite prophetic. Not that I've necessarily been prophetic, but meeting prophetic people who are just alive with their faith. And so in an interesting way, and I don't know, I've kind of lost track of what I was going to say.
No, it's okay. It is a long podcast, and that absolutely happens.
But in a way, all the time...
You're making Katie feel better, by the way.
I am, thank you. That's good, Katie. Well, I'm here to oblige. So in many ways, going back to the people that make a difference, whether it was Sister Rose Martin when I was in the Vincentian Service Corps, or Our Lady of the Rosary was 63rd in Calla Hill, which is closed now, Sister Mercy, who kind of living her charism in the midst of educating inner city youth and Catholic education. It was so inspiring because I said, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to do that. And that's where I now, truth be told, and I hope Mary Kay doesn't kill me, but Mary Kay is the better of the two smarts in the sense that she went from Chestnut Hill, worked Roman Haas, was making some pretty good coin. As I was struggling as a Catholic educator, I think at Mercy Vocation, also it's my career and technical, I think I was making close to $17,000 a year.
That sounds about right.
I'm in 1994. So could you imagine that? Katie wouldn't
Just made me feel better.
Did you? Yeah. Well, it was 1994, but anyway. But my point being, like, there has to be a bigger picture of greater sustainability down the road for me somewhere. But I was sticking with it, and fortunately, I have a partner in life who's journeying with me on that too, as I support with her. So.
It's funny because when I was looking through your resume for the position, yours. So, I mentioned that your two predecessors, and they were both academic inclined, as I like to think of it, as people who, would have been happy in a life of being a full-time student, just a professional student and learning and then retaining and then speaking to others. But the fact that you have that sort of academic mindset, I get, but you seemed very dedicated to your role as a teacher. You moved from you were at a couple of very well-known, actually more than a few, very well-known schools. Now, I'll tell you right off the bat, as a PR guy, you look at my LinkedIn profile and it's like 17 different jobs because that's the only way you can have a job like mine is to move around a lot.
Yep.
But you've moved around a little bit as well, but it always seemed like one great opportunity after another.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was very fortunate. And here's the trick to that success. Well, first is always being true to yourself, but when someone says and taps you and say, you should check this out, I think you'd be good here. My mother a long time ago told me that, listen to those voices. That's what I did. And so it brought me to great people. And one of which, who is now the Sister of St. Joseph, president of Mount St. Joseph Academy, Charlene Diorca, was one of those people over time who I've kept in contact with, who even when this position came up was kind of saying, check it out, and kind of pray, bring it to discernment, bring it to prayer. And I've always been listening to those voices because they've never failed me, I think over time. And it brings you to great institutions. Our institutions are great, whether it's the schools that I taught at, because the people within them are great and they have a sense of mission and they understand for instance, their students and where their gifts and talents lie, and will hold the bar high. And I think that's what makes institutions great. I think when it just rests on the laurel, and we can speak to this to our own church, we find that we struggle and we wonder where the faith and where the zeal is. Two things, by the way, which are at the heart of the charism of the Christian brothers, faith and zeal. So those are two things I hold dear. And it's kind of speak about that when I've done some writing, was about the need for that.
Just to put this out there right now, if you didn't already know, and I can't recall if I mentioned it to you yet, but I'm a St. Joe's alum, and so I've been educated by the Jesuits. So for a variety of reasons, most of the words you're saying are just raising my hackles. Although you actually do quote. I read one of your
Cura Personalis, teaching the whole. Yes,
exactly. But I did. You quote from Jesuits a lot.
I do,
like a good academic should.
Absolutely. I don't know what you're reading over there.
Oh yeah, it's making him nervous. Every time you pick up the papers, he starts sweating a little.
He has a great background, and fortunately, it's all very well documented. And one of the things I was given was I don't remember if this is your dissertation or what, but it's
part of it. It's a segment to it.
It's teaching students on the flatlands of a desacralized world, which I love. My philosophy on the importance of religious education and the role of the religious educator. First of all, I love academics because, so as a PR person, we are taught to write tight.
Yes,
y'all don't have that problem. No, it's like, how many words can I get into each of these sentences? But it's a great topic because this is something that, as a communicator, we fight about all the time. Is so 50 years ago, religion was still a major focal point of our society across across audiences, across every genre of Catholicism, but of every element of the United States and the world. Religion was incredibly important. Now we have we face a culture that, you don't see any faith playing an active, preeminent role. And your this portion of your dissertation was really sort of a fascinating read about how to view it, and then how to combat it, how to understand it, maybe.
Both.
Yeah.
And that, thank you. And that is a slice. I was asked to put an educational philosophy together when I was interviewing different places, and I thought, well, I have it right here. It's part of the title of the dissertation is The Prophetic Imagination as the Conduit of Grace for students living on the flatlands of a desacralized world. So to your academic, and I would consider some of my friends to be way more academic than me, but and I have a lot of people to thank, namely Brother John Crawford is at LaSalle University and Father Frank Berner, but who guided me in that process. But yeah, that is in fact where we are. We are on the flatlands of a desacralized world. And what is a flatlands? It's a place where there's no life, to the point where you were saying where biblical imagery is rolling hills and raging waters. There's life, and there's the zest of life, the Zoe, the Greek part of what that life means. There is we are in a place where, as Father Patrick Hyde was saying, we have connected youth, but they're alone. And disinfected, and that's the flatlands, and that term is particular to the great author and leadership skills generator Parker Palmer. So that's where I get that from.
Oh, very nice. And your doctorate is through LaSalle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a number of LaSalle graduates in my family, and it's very irritating because they're all very well, and they're all academics too. Oh my God, I didn't realize that.
See that.
Oh my God, there's something there.
The Christian Brotherhood doing something.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So you spent all this time primarily in secondary education, though I know you did some college
Correct.
time
yeah,
too.
primarily
right?
in secondary.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a tough group of people to preach to. I mean,
Right.
I currently have a almost 15-year-old who's never wrong.
God love you. Is that girl, boy?
Boy.
Okay.
And baseball player on top of that. So,
Right.
he's really only worried about his right arm, his hitting, and hasn't quite gotten to girls yet, but I think that's starting to flare up. So there's going to be more distractions soon. Well, he asked the girl to the freshman dance, and I was not prepared for that.
Where's he go to school?
He goes to Paul VI High School.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's okay to ask those questions.
No, it's fine. I've talked about it on the podcast. Jack is well known. But that's a tough group. I mean, it's one thing to talk to college students who are at least a little bit more articulate, whereas high school students might just turn you off when you try to have an explanation to them.
Right.
So do you find that working with high school students and I suppose college students has honed your skills?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Right. Well, so you can't do anything in the way of, particularly with faith or education, period, without being a little bit of a trickster,
Nice.
And appealing to imagination. Because if you go right in the subject matter and just teach what is the subject matter and not look at the subjects, then you're doomed to fail. And that Paulo Freire, his Pedagogy of the Oppressed, really speaks about that. And that was one of my go-to books. Is you have to understand who's in front of you as an educator, because if you don't do that, then anything that you might, in particular when it comes to theology, religious studies, you're going to lose, because you're ultimately bringing them to the person of Jesus. So things can be so theological that they may understand what it is to learn something on a test, but the really heart of it all is bringing them in a relationship, or at least providing the opportunity, not as a matter of indoctrination, but as a matter of invitation. And I think that's the key. And so, because if we as church, as educators, go a matter of indoctrination, we can't, especially not with the population that we have. And I understand what it's like, because with my 3 children, having gone through through that, the struggles. But really, every child wants to be seen and known and valued. and in ways that I've, over the years, along with people that I call friends and former colleagues, we've been successful when we've done that.
Yeah.
And so we can talk about all sorts of different subject matters, and you bring them to a place where you can, for instance, when I was at St. Augustine Prep, very short time, we were talking about the problem of evil and doing some theological insights in that, and it doesn't have far to go to understand and make the connections, especially to kind of find out where their experiences are in that. And so it can be done. It's harder, though, because where it comes in terms of faith is many families aren't or haven't been able to have that center core value within them to speak freely about faith. And so it kind of relies sometimes on the education system to do that, and that's some of the Barna Group work, especially St. Mary's Press that came out some years ago on the disillusioned youth in terms of faith. And plus, you brought up the point where we are living in a culture of disrespect. Just think about, even in context, and this is for another subject matter, of gun violence. It's the heightened peak of where we see these, and this is not a minimalistic answer to that, is the matter of fact of the degrading of civility within our culture. So it may not be necessarily a culture of guns. It's a lack of culture of civility. So if you just add guns to that, things can be even more chaotic. And so I'm sorry to open up maybe a Pandora's box on that, but I think they're all interrelated. And so...
well, that's just it. Your department is a Pandora's box in that regard. I mean, it's
absolutely. I think you just
really
nailed it. I'm going to use that term.
By the way, I also appreciate the fact that Katie immediately wrote down not indoctrination but invitation. I thought that was good.
There's so many good quotes you have said. I'm just writing all of them down.
I think you made my day.
This is a great soundbite.
Yeah, exactly.
Really.
So at the beginning of the podcast, I talked about how this is a very unique department. Now, I view it probably different. I hope differently than you, and I know I viewed it more differently from your predecessors. But I looked at it from an audience perspective, and oftentimes I've made the argument a couple of times. Although you did a great job of blowing up my argument earlier without realizing it. So good for you. I've always found that Life and Justice was sort of from an audience perspective, not from what it should be, but from how people react to it. You have the life side, which is the pro-life side.
Right.
And then you have the justice side, which is the social justice side.
Right.
And in my time within the diocese, and even before I came to the diocese, I found that oftentimes those are two audiences that didn't necessarily get along. This is something you and I have talked about before, that, the pro-lifers are very pro-life oriented. And they seem to have less energy for anything related to social justice, and the social justice side seems to have, it's very much migrants, immigrants, social care for people, and oftentimes we'll get irritated by the amount of focus that's put on the one subject of pro-life, even though you and I obviously, and the three of us obviously know that pro-life is more than just, but is more than the right to life for the unborn.
Right.
But as someone who has to work with those folks tangentially, sometimes it can get difficult. I get some calls.
Which makes me think, I've had this question, because you said when you're working with students, you have to be a bit of a trickster. I'm really curious to learn how you want to be a trickster with our parishioners to get them.
Did you just say he's going to trick our parishioners?
I know. No, I said trickster and leveraging imagination.
Nice catch. Well done.
Well, that is awesome. First of all, it's a good way.
You want to write down a note on her?
I didn't have a pen with me, but I have it right here. And that's why over the next few weeks, and starting even with next week, I'm meeting with people who are really well gifted at that. And I won't mention their names of yet, but they might be opportunities for conversation. They individuals who have worked intensely with parishes and are doing great things. If I can speak to the what you're talking about, the pro-life thing, we're in this year Eucharistic revival. There's books and things on the Eucharist and social justice. We can see that as a way to bring groups together, case in point, United for Life is huge in South Jersey, but many people don't know that they're working with moms in need and collecting resources, life sources for people that are doing much the same work as people in social justice. So there is so much to be caught at the center, and who stands at the center but Christ? So that's going to be the work, and I'm going to take what you just said, Katie, and put it right there, because it's the imagination. So we have this thing called a moral imagination, and it doesn't mean morality in a sense of thou shalt not. It's what would Jesus do? Type of using that kind of, and what is the gospel mandate, and along with what our church teaches. But it's bringing the person to the center of all things. Once we begin to do that, I think that's where we make the inroads to work with and for one another, and not against each other. We're on the same team. So that is going to be the work at hand, because I've already been approached. 2 people have approached me. One, I don't know, at the end of the Chrism Mass, I met someone and they said, well, life and justice. We had a really strong pro-life group, and then justice came along. And I'm like, I didn't know what to say to that. But my point being was that wasn't the first person. It was another person that did something similar to that. And I thought, well, I'll stand at a Chrism Mass. I'm helping Mike Beddix pack up. And I'm like, okay, well, here we go. I was told that this would be the thing. But her point was that there may not have been clarity in everything, and when things have, the communications of that have been, use that word again, fallow for a couple of years, then bringing people on board is important, or at least creating and clarifying the roles. What we are as church is important. What we're doing in office here as well.
Yeah, and see, the thing is, it's going to be incredibly necessary, but I know it's going to be slow, because for one thing, you need to meet everybody.
Correct.
And we have 62 parishes, and not including all the ministries that sort of fall under that.
Right.
It's a lot. It's going to be. We know that we're not going to get a lot from you in the very beginning. Sorry, Katie, but he gets a bye for a little bit.
It's fine. He's a director. We're different
Whoa,
playing fields.
First of all, don't be throwing that around, because no
we
director
never actually
in the diocese.
introduced him through his title. What his title is. You just brought him in as Dr. Mike Sims. So.
Did I not do that?
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to slip that in there.
It'll be
Director
in
of
the
Life
blurb.
and Justice
I play my
Ministries.
co-host, but okay, yeah, that's true. He's the director of Life and Justice Ministries.
And that's not to say I don't think directors put in work. I just mean we're on completely different playing
No,
fields.
you're actually right. Most directors don't. It's just you're saying it in front of one who works harder than everybody else and hates all the other directors because they don't do anything.
Those were not my intentions. I just meant you cannot compare
all you've done is
we're different.
No, Katie, what you did was you poked the bear. That's what you did. You poked the bear, and now the bear's
We're
angry.
almost out of time.
This is Smartless. You all need to listen to that podcast. I feel like
we love podcasts around here. We don't like bringing up other people's podcasts.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't want to send anybody else.
We're gonna beep it out like you cursed.
you gotta watch the episode with Dana Carvey, because he does a Ross Perot thing. Anyway, I digress.
We actually, it's funny because the people are listening going, you just did a podcast all about another podcast 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, yes, I did. And I hated every second of it. And what was even more annoying is I got a ton of play online. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
man.
that's how it is.
Like, I need to give Father Mike Schmitz a little more notoriety.
There you go.
But it's a great podcast. He does a great job. Fine. There you go. Made Donna happy. Whatever. I like making Donna. Donna, fine. Donna's happy. Okay, whatever. I referred to her as my frenemy on I got chastised, actually. I didn't let you know, Mike. I got chastised on the podcast once for not being nice enough to Donna.
Really?
Donna and I have a fantastic relationship. We work constantly with each other, but it's become sort of brother and sister.
Yeah.
And mostly we just try to insult each other. Well... She, however, is far more professional than I am. So when we're on the podcast, she's like on board, she's on it, right?
Yes.
Whereas I
I've
still am
listened to her.
like poking, and someone did not like that and said I had to be nicer, and I was like, okay, I'll be nicer.
And you haven't learned?
No, I did. Although now I'm probably gonna you need to be nicer to Katie. You need to be nicer to Mike.
Is there going to be like scrolling comments after this podcast?
I can only hope.
Okay.
I like comment interaction. That would as a social media guy, that would only be great. You know what do they say? There's no such thing as bad PR.
Yeah,
I'm okay with it.
Okay,
that's fine. So you've been on board now for a whole 4 weeks. Have there been things that have surprised you, like things that are going to be more difficult than you realized, or perhaps easier than you realized? I mean, obviously, your coworkers are all fantastic, not in the pastoral department, but elsewhere.
Oh, no, yeah. Well, the overwhelming amount of work that people do. I mentioned that the harvest is plenty and the laborers are few. Those who are laboring are doing so much work. I mean, that is a positive. But, yeah, I could see where that is a source of stress and strain, people being called on task to do many things. And it's I can see, or for me, the value in work like this is to be present. So that's what I'm going to try to put first and foremost. And, people before programs sounds like a campaign bit. I don't know. I don't know that. I'm sorry.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's your marketing
but that's
slogan.
the marketing part of it all. So I think in a way of surprise, in a way of like maybe a cautionary type of tale of sorts, is to kind of keep that in mind and check. But also the beauty of it all is how people's sense of humor, and I love sarcasm. And sometimes,
welcome.
And
you can come anytime
because
you want.
life has enough hardships and bumps and turns as it is. You have to have that sense, and as I mentioned, the joy that people have in doing what they're doing. I think that's we must have that. So that's a little bit in short where I'm going to say I can see that just being able. I never want to be in a position where I have to justify my existence. I mean, I think that's the worst thing that any kind of institution can place on its members is to kind of say, oh, you're going to have this or you're not doing your job. I'm like, well, I don't know if Jesus ever made that criteria. So, what are we doing here? To be called, to be chosen by name is key. And I think that would be something for me to kind of in the work that's ahead to kind of make sure and affirm within parish social groups that they are not only seeing the need, but making sure that they are seeing people and ways in which I could be a support and resource in that process, and affirming and validating them, which. That's the beautiful thing that I've seen so far is the different places, whether it's going to Sister of St. Joseph Neighborhood Center. The amount of work and beauty that's going on, it's fantastic. Now, I've been only a few places, but where I've been, there's so much good. Yeah. And I can see doing this for a little bit longer.
Well, that's good
only
to hear.
Because I think that...
That's nice. Please stick around, Mike.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. Hey, I don't mind filling up jars with Kathy Johnson. Christ, our light. God, hi, Kathy. For the Chrism Mass. I mean, that was fun from doing that to going out in parishes. So
that is, yeah. Well, it's nice because that Chrism Mass is one of my favorite masses.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the finest liturgies.
It is. It's a great liturgy, and the spiritual philosophy behind it is outstanding, but the people that come to it are very devout and very dedicated. And yes, the oil fillers behind the scenes are awesome to be around.
Hey, God calls you to do all sorts of things.
That's what you got to do. What you got to do, and it's a big event because they by the end of that event they have all that oil needs to be ready to go. So they have like 45 minutes to turn it around, so that all the pastors can bring it back with them. But no, it's a great benefit for us that you're here, and I'm really happy that you are. I've already told Katie that it's more than likely that she will spend a lot of time with you going forward because there is a lot of overlap between Catholic Charities and your department. So
not overlap.
Oh, that's right.
Crossing streams.
That's right. You're crossing.
That's what you said.
That's good.
Thank you for taking notes, Katie.
Yep.
That's right. I expect both of you to cross streams together. That's nice. Or fjording streams.
Doing
maybe,
New Year's, I can come to South Philly.
Yes. I've been inviting people to my house from South Philly all day today. That's so funny you brought that up.
I mentioned it to him.
I'm going down.
I actually was assuming you've been enjoying this podcast. I had news for you, Katie. This is one of the few podcasts you are ever going to hear this many Philly references on it because usually we cut all those out. But Mike's so much of his career has been over there, so get used to hearing things like Collingswood, Hamilton, Salem, Millville, Whitesboro, Burley.
Burley. Where's Burley?
Yeah, right.
Burley and Whitesboro are outside of Wildwood. And I was
gosh.
I used to
No.
cover
How many
them.
times have we
Between the
down
bridge
there?
and Wildwood, there's nothing for me. I don't know what any of it.
First of all, it's called Rio Grande.
Okay, Rio Grande.
Oh, I know
Once I
that.
get to Rio Grande, then I'm like, everywhere else, I don't know.
How can you be from South Philly and not be
I'm from
invested
Northeast.
in?
Let's get it
okay,
correct.
let me rephrase that. How
I'm
can
from
well,
Northeast Philly.
That's
Yeah.
actually even more. How can you be from Northeast Philly and not know every section of the Jersey Shore?
I do.
you all end up in
I'm
there.
lying. I'm
Okay.
absolutely lying.
That's
I
fine.
know all of the Jersey
You don't know
Shore.
where Whitesboro is.
My wife's from Northeast, Knights and Chalfont, so...
That's
so
exactly
right.
where I'm from.
Get out.
Via Chalfont.
And we've just
yeah.
come to the close of the podcast. So thank you all for joining us. Katie, this has been outstanding. Thank you for really coming on the last minute. And Mike, thank you for coming across the street and joining us.
Thank you so
And
much. I
we-
really appreciate your
And
time.
you're welcome on for future podcasts anytime you got something to talk about.
We're
All
a
right.
future co-host. maybe.
Awesome.
Probably.
Oh, good. Thank you.
All right, see you, everybody.
God bless.